It's September 28th, 2021. I'm still in a place that flies this flag. I call it the criminal children from everywhere. Oh, just because of the way I'm being held in position of illegal double yellow occupancy. Alright, it's raining outside. So I took my umbrella. I took my flip-flops. I started walking, and as I was walking, I was thinking of the handsome family member that I don't know, I've never met, but from somewhere else that I saw on television that came to visit from something called a British Army, who was raising money for gene therapy with a yellow bucket. And how he was brave enough to walk in New York City barefoot. So for me, I'm like, no, that's interesting. Now, why is he I'll walk so I don't ruin my sneakers, my brand new sneakers Linda just bought me. While it's pouring outside, I will walk with flip-flops. And then I'm like, what's really the difference? My feet are filthy anyway. These are the thought patterns. So I'm like, in his honor, I will take off my flip-flops and I will walk barefoot on the sidewalk. That was the only commitment I was making. So I took them off and I started walking on the pavement or the sidewalk. Then I got to the traffic light and I'm like, oh, that's a dirty street. It's a really dirty street. So I put the flip-flops down, I put my feet into them, I walked across the blacktop, got to the other side, and then I took my flip-flops back off and I held them in my left hand, and my umbrella in my right. My black and green umbrella. So I kept walking, and then for a few streets, I put my flip-flops down, walked over the blacktop or the street covering, and then took them back off when I got to the other side of the street. And then finally I gave up on that when I felt comfortable enough. And I just finished walking the Boulevard, Bell Boulevard, that way. I did come upon a few different humans, we'll call them, that were walking, and I made note to make sure that they knew I was walking barefoot, because sometimes humans don't realize this. I was walking across the street earlier, and VIP, the pizzeria here, one of them over here, had a line out the door and around the corner at 11 something a.m. Have no idea what that was about, but I saw on one of my, I think it was my first walk with the umbrella, I saw the amount of people, and I was just like, wow, actually, it had to been earlier than that, but so I pointed it out to a woman who crossed the street. She said her time was 11 something, and I said, did you see how many people are across the street? I was like, that's a bizarre phenomenon. I said, that doesn't happen every day. The line is incredible. So she looked, she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, I didn't even, so she noticed it, but I had to point it out. So that prompted me to then point out to a couple of passerbyers about my flip-flops and the abnormal barefoot event. So one gentleman, the first gentleman that I mentioned it to, he said something about like getting in touch with the earth, and I go, exactly, like movie moment. And then I spun around and there was like some tall guy with a black t-shirt on and some kind of this color that said something about an army. I don't know what that was about, but he was not the same brethren, let's call it, as the family member that I was walking to memorialize. So let's just get ourselves clear here. At British Army, and then what's wearing logos in America on the streets of North America. And I have no big brother or little brother to ask. So then I kept walking. I mentioned it to a couple of different people. And then I came home, and as I was walking and watching the ground, which I always watch the ground anyway, the rain puddles in certain areas were hitting the ground and washing over to like the side and congregating. Now, right over by Chase Bank, I didn't bring my phone with me. I should have caught it on video. It had a slope where it was like gray sandstone cement, and then the water was collecting right there, coming the opposite direction off the blacktop. And the water was not clear. The water had sediment in it. It was a black ash sediment that was collecting, and I could see it so very clearly in the water, because of the color of the cement and the way that it was sloped and the way that the blacktop was articulating with that reservoir. So that happened, and then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, right, I know the streets are absolutely filthy. I can feel it in the air. I can smell it. I can breathe it. I mean, I know I can see it, when there's no water, just how off color it is, from when it was originally a brand new town in certain sections without. I can kind of time warp myself into what it's morphed into or collected into, and it's not really pleasant. And so as the rainwater hit, I can actually see the sediment with my eyes collecting in like a black silt, almost like crude tar, I guess is the word I would use for it. But I don't know what is creating this black ash. I just know that it's settling on the streets, which is part of the reason why now I'm walking with an umbrella. The other part is the sun is way too hot and high, and the microns, and it's burning my skin, and it's causing me to change colors in really weird, analogous ways. So that silt collection was really gross. And then I walked home barefoot, and I came straight upstairs, and I had to wash my feet and my hands because it was like following me, like stuck to my feet. That kind of grit was stuck to my feet, and it didn't come off until I actually used soap and lather and washed off the disgusting street. It's so gross to live around here. So I'm in Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. It is September 28th, 2021. And it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And I'm Nicole, Cattaruzza, star 1978, star 8378. I was thinking earlier also, real quick, since I did the Mother of Nature and the In Tune with Nature, since most people, what would you do to get to be where you belong? Would you walk barefoot and make like a real statement? Peasants with pageantry, no matter how important you are in the world? Yeah, of course I would. I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so 16. I'm in Huntington. I get Christopher, was it Chris Lyons? Yeah, it was Chris Lyons. Some gigantic guy. I mean, like 6'5", like football, like, and tall. I mean, like unlike, like, not human. Comes into Cold Spring Harbor Junior High for health class and sits next to me. Barely fits in a high school stage chair that I was sitting in my little Soviet 5'6". And then he invites me out later that evening because he had somebody who wanted to see me. And I said, of course I'll be there. So I went, not knowing who it would be. And then I met with Niklaus, Mark, whatever, and it was confusing, but you own me? Great. thank God you finally arrived. If I'm your painted, like, where have you been? He's like, I can't answer that. I'm like, great, okay, so take me, like, with you. Like, when are we leaving? Like, do I have to go home? No, for what? There is no home here. There's a place with some woman and man named Linda and Lou, but that's all. And then all of a sudden, at some point within that gathering, he and I walked outside. It was like a pub-like setting, but nobody else was there. I mean, there was a Polish guy or an Eastern European guy that was there earlier drinking something, an alcohol beverage. I didn't know what that was. Asking about a garage and what my house was built like, that the two people I didn't like I was living with, which I explained to him, the garage was under the house where they would put this automobile under. And then you close the door and you walk up or whatever. And then I went outside with, I guess we'll call him Nicholas at this point. What four-letter word would be M-A-R-K or M-A-R-C, I'm not quite sure. And then at some point, machine shut off. Like, dome went red. Like, not my dome, but like the sky dome, where it's usually like a white or a dark blue color like this. It went red. And it was just he and I in the brick courtyard. And then he had to leave. And then somehow I got back to Linda and Lou's, which I can't even remember how that happened. And that's glitch mob. That's when the machine's about to shut off and I finally get a visit from who I need in some repair queue. But the toxicity level, it seems to be timed with some toxicity level, which I can't figure out if they're trying to fuck with me, in the sense of, no, the dome definitely turned red. I've been in Barefoot before, and I've, like, I don't know, you deposit verificaton. I think some of you say it's a deposition. Right, okay, so I was deputized with something important somewhere in the world. I just don't know what to call them or how to reference them or where they exist while my day label is trapped in this flag system in something called New York, on something called a Long Island. At this point, it's something called a Queens. Before, it was something called a Suffolk. And it's connected by something called a Northern Boulevard. And the cross section is Bell Boulevard. So that happened. I don't know why. I mean, I can cipher out the universal code when I'm in the machine, but I don't understand when my anterior has nobody to look at but myself on a deposition to myself and to Niklaus that I'm trying to get back to, and who I know early on was trying to get to me. I don't know what happened there either. It's the posterior that gets really confusing until next machine break, because you're most certainly going to break the machine again. It's the only, I mean, you're on catastrophic programming at this point. I mean, the atmosphere is burning, you're sitting on top of a nuclear fission chemistry experiment that's throwing signs out there to everybody that the machine's off kilter and it's off its zenith. But yet they're running it like as if it's an election for, like, whose smartest and best looking kids can communicate the best. Die. This should not be a competition. When the machine breaks and the sky dome goes red, I still exist in a bubble. It looks like an energy field surrounding a bubble. I have no more face. But my existence, my essence is what they call it, still exists in some lit, gaseous whatever. And it goes into a different whatever, in whatever, until they get enough whatever and then try to put it back and sew it seamlessly back in. But there's even bigger breaks on the horizon now because you've allowed it to break so many times, and now humans are involved. I don't know what to say. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I actually live it, so it's not really hard to explain, to visualize, and to grammatically explain. Is there life out there? Yeah, there is. And currently it's trying to fix the machine you live on. It's just there's so many of you that are just so important in so many aspects, locally and abroad, that nobody's actually doing anything that works for long term. And I've got no communication method other than deputizing myself in some deposition that I deposit into Nicholas's hands via some interior American internet between the anterior, posterior, interior. And then when everything breaks and I get to Ethernet level, whatever and whatever, until lately it's been that I've been sent back here by myself, which is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.